Okay, good. So we're going to start with some conversations about vibe programming. So Neil decided, volunteered to help us out in the discussion. He has some material. For those who don't know Neil, I just want to give you a 30 seconds introduction. Uh, he's like a very experienced CIO, CTO here in Utah. He has led projects and companies such as OC Tanner, West Governors, Sorensen, Utah State University, and very expert in initiatives in cloud transformation, cybersecurity, enterprise systems, data-driven decision making. So a very, very experienced person that volunteered to help us out in the discussion as well. He's also part of the AIM leadership team. So for those who joined the other AIM meetings, he's part of the leadership as well. He's working today as an advisor for emerging technology expert at VLCM. He's also chairman of the FC's Tripedal and IDC.
Yep.
So very excited to have him joining us to talk a little bit about vibe programming. After that, we're going to have some demos for the second half of the meeting. So when the time comes, we're going to go straight to there. But with no further ado, Neil, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiago. Nice to be with you. For those that are too young to remember, I was one of the creators of the AI SIG way back in the day, like 3 years ago or whenever it was, whenever AI became a thing. Anyway, I'm going to share some slides, but let me just start by saying this isn't a presentation, this is a discussion. I've got some slides, but hopefully they're just to trigger some thoughts. I'd like to get your thoughts on the process implications of vibe programming. How do our software development processes, product development processes need to change in an environment of vibe programming platforms? And then I also want to talk about, because I've been in a lot of conversations just in the last few weeks about we're using this stuff now. We've improved our productivity, our throughput dramatically. What do we do with that improved productivity? So I want to talk about this. So anyway, I'll pull up my slides if that's okay. Sorry, I was on Zoom this morning, so now I got to find the share button here because it's always a little different. Okay. All right. So I'm just, Tiago already introduced me. I'll do the quick and dirty. I got into IT out of spite and anger. I was the VP of operations for a local company and complained so much about how bad their IT was that to shut me up, they put me in charge of it. And that was like a long time ago. Like Tiago said, I'm experienced. That means I'm really old. I've done a number of IT turnarounds and transformations. In there, written a couple of books, hundreds of articles, and I was in the inaugural class of the Utah AI 100 based on some of the AI work I've done. I always use this slide because like Tiago said, I've been around. I was around in 1950 when enterprise compute just started. So the thing that's important about this from a technology perspective, from a technology leadership perspective is for most of the history of enterprise technology, the organization had needs, and we technologists developed technologies to support those existing needs. They were business needs. So organizational needs drove technology development. Well, that started to change in what I call digital transformation wave one, social, mobile, analytics, cloud. Now the business rules, the business objectives, the business models started to be driven by technology. So as technologists, we went from a support role to more of a lead role. Now we're in the midst of what I call digital transformation wave two, which is the age of AI automation. I call it Citizen X, because you don't necessarily need to have deep technical skills in order to develop and use technology today. And then I think we're getting closer and closer to wave three, which is autonomous behaviors. So it's going to be interesting to see. But the important point is, as technologists, our role changed during this time from support to lead, from follower to guide, from follower to influencer. It's just something to keep in mind. So, wait, I'm going to start my slideshow. We'll see if this works. Okay, the important question is, did my slide change?
See, senor. Yes.
Okay, good. Because I've built in these high-end animations. So here's what I want to talk about. This is my context. Historically, when it came to software development, the big rock that was in our way was the massive amount of time and effort it takes to build software. So from your perspective, what are some of the processes we implemented, we put in place because it took so much time and effort to build software? What did we do to make sure that as soon as we started to build the software, we had it right? What are your thoughts from a methodology perspective, from a process perspective? Anybody want to share their thoughts?
Scrum thought.
You're talking about Agile?
Yeah, Agile is an example. So how did Agile help us make sure that we were ready to build software when we were ready to build software? What did we do via Agile? We prioritized, obviously. We defined requirements, at least for the next sprint. We built a backlog that was prioritized because we wanted to make sure we didn't make a mistake. We didn't want rework in the software. What else have we done over the years to make sure that we got it right? Go ahead.
The thing about Agile, Neil, is that we got the developers closer to the end user.
Yep. So we had feedback loops, right?
Yeah.
Make sure we didn't get too far off track. We had tight feedback loops. What else from an investment perspective, from an approval perspective?
A lot of peer reviews.
We
Sorry,
embraced ambiguity.
What was that?
We embraced ambiguity.
Yeah, exactly. We recognized that things were going to be different or change, so we adapted to that. What did it take sometimes to get a project approved? Or most times, because it was going to be a fairly massive investment in time and effort to build something. So we made sure there was a valid business case, right? We had to go through some type of approval process. Is this worth it? Is this worth it? What's the value case? What's the cost benefit analysis, etc.? Okay, what did we do on, well, I'm just going to click it. So we developed concepts. We had to build a value case. We had to get requirements. Even if we were using Agile versus Waterfall, we had to have requirements before we started building anything, even if it was on a per sprint basis. We prioritized everything. And the other thing I saw over time is we tended to preserve sunk costs. What I mean by that is, I'm not sure this is going to deliver the value we expected. We've already spent 80% of the time and effort. Let's just finish it instead of ignoring the sunk costs. So sometimes we would proceed with something that was bad because we'd already invested because the investment was so large. Okay. Agile was built to help us keep on track versus off track. We wanted to minimize rework, feedback loops. And then we started to get to release automation, right? We wanted to release it faster. And then we do a lot of backlog management. So now the question I want to discuss is, how are those different if the time and effort it takes to build software is a tiny rock instead of a massive rock? Which of these things do we still need to do? What do you think? Pretty quiet group.
I'd say concept validation, value case,
Feedback loops.
some feedback loops. Yeah.
Prioritize.
Okay, we still need to prioritize. Do we need to preserve some costs?
No.
No. What do we need to do differently in concept validation and value case and requirements and feedback loops? What's different? What do we need to do differently? Because that's the question. What are the process implications of vibe programming? How should these methodologies change if the time and effort it takes to build software is much smaller than it was in the past? What do you think? Before I tell you what I think.
I'm bumping into this right now. So I just landed at my next place and inherited an IT group who've been vibe coding for a minute. And it's still those upstream and downstream processes on your slide here that I think are candidates for automating so that we can have as an input a good user requirement specification, a good URS that informs the vibe coding engine.
Right.
And then out the back end, we should be able to spit out a, test cases and everything else, do a lot of automated testing on our own before we ever show up to a user.
Yep.
And then also check a lot more boxes that sometimes don't come out in the meeting with the customer. You know, the things around security, standards, those kinds of things too, can also be leveraged in your AI harness.
You talked, Craig, about testing. And
Yes.
in standard development, you've got a guy that knows what the code is doing because he wrote it. And he's had a peer review with somebody that knows what that code does because he's writing his own, and they've reviewed it. And then you do testing, and so you need this much testing. But in vibe coding, you've got a guy that has a basic understanding of how the code works that doesn't get peer reviewed. And so the testing, in my mind, has to be a lot bigger. You have unintended consequences because maybe I didn't know how to properly lock that database row, and I didn't explain to the AI that I had to build that in. And so now we've got corruption in our database. And so that testing has to be increased, I think.
I agree, which I would say is also a good candidate for your AI harness, right?
Mhm.
If you can build testing agents into your workflow, make sure that those agents are doing a lot of that testing for you in advance, smoke testing, finding those gaps and vulnerabilities before it's ever shown to the user.
And I think that, for example, in our business, I mean, we've never had development. We're just starting into it right now. The issue is that you take these concepts and from what we're saying, hey, we're applying this more to development teams that have a concept about even any of these issues. But now we're saying, oh, well, hey, you don't need any knowledge. Now I have accountants that are now seasoned developers, but they don't know the first thing about anything. Yeah. And they don't understand, okay, you're going to spin this up. That's super cool. How are you going to back it up? Oh, how are you going to authenticate users? Oh,
Right.
How are you going to, what's your testing loops? Like, how are you going to actually do this? And, oh, well, yeah, okay, you know what? Never mind on this. And the thing is, I'm getting pushback from like the C-level saying, oh, no, IT, we don't want you to gatekeep. You can't gatekeep on this because you're adding a little bit of friction. And when you add a little bit of friction, it'll just shut down innovation. And guess what? We're getting left behind by all our competitors. There's such a FOMO going on right now at the C-suite that they are taking off. They're saying, nope, everyone unbuckle the seatbelts, floor it. Let's just get in the fast lane and push this Tesla to see how fast it'll go. Seatbelts off. Because
It's like
we're getting
driving in
left
the dark
behind.
with no lights.
Yep. I'm living this.
Yeah. The other thing, in addition to quality, that you didn't mention, Craig, is that we spent a lot of times in decades past teaching developers how to create secure code, how to watch for things like buffer overflows and use after free and all of the things. And the AI isn't going to leave a use after free behind. It just won't do that. But there are other vulnerabilities that it might leave in. And unless we spend time looking for those, then the stuff that Matt is pumping out is not only going to be wrong, perhaps, but also might let people into your back end systems. And so those are the two things I think we need to really pay attention to.
Totally agree.
Good stuff. Any other thoughts? What else needs to change?
This is Brent Sheldon. I think fundamentally the business problem in getting the answer right, or the problem definition, is the absolute most paramount. It's the furthest shift left you can be, because the iteration is so quick.
Yeah.
And that the solutioning happens so fast that continued iteration on the problem and that you're solving is worth solving, and validation for the market becomes more important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think vibe coding really accelerates the concept validation and the value case proposition. You can rapidly prototype, so you can iterate very, very quickly to identify the concepts that are going to work, identify the things that are going to bring value. But at that point, you do need more structure, and that's something we've identified, that vibe coding is not the same as product development. And so we've separated this into, agentic engineering, which is very methodical, very much based on a well-defined SDLC, but it all starts with that vibe coding where we're actually just iterating quickly to find the value and to validate the concepts that we then want to build in a way that will result in a very strong product.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I was talking to an engineer that's developed a platform. And I said, okay, from a career perspective, what are the implications for you? said, I've shifted from spending 80% of my time writing code and 20% engineering to 80% engineering. Does that make sense? I'm focused much more on the problem and the problem solution and the design, because the code generation, where before it was my hands on the keyboard, that's being done by something else. I still need to test and validate it and make sure it's quality, et cetera, et cetera. But he said, he loves it. He said, I get to be an engineer where before I was a typer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a much more time now that you can spend on actual design of the software, the architecture of the software.
Yeah.
Because
but then you have to tightly specify it to make sure that the AI knows what it's doing. Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. This is really good stuff. Thanks. Any other thoughts before I go to my next slide?
So Niel, maybe you'll touch on this, but so one thing, you know, I mentioned like business users become coders, but even if you're junior developers, you know, people with a couple of years in, one of the things, and there's a whole group of people that believe that right now we're kind of in the gateway drug phase of this, and the non-sustainability of it. That right now we're, hey, let's throw $200 a month and we're getting all these tokens, but hey, what happens when that goes up to $2,000 for the same amount, or $4,000? The problem is if you've now created this, you know, monstrosity that nobody has really taken the time to document and understand. The thought is right now, hey, not a problem. The code that was written by a model in 2025, the 2027 model is going to look at that and say, hey, that's child's play. I can completely redo that. The problem is if you're dropping $20,000 a month right now in tokens, that might be $100,000 in 2027. So maybe you'll hit on that.
You know, and it brings up a good point, because maybe the cost of the time and effort has shifted from writing the code. Because I think there's something of an analogy. Remember a few years ago when low code, no code platforms came into play, we still had to have some governance model, because otherwise what you replace the cost of development with the cost of complexity and the cost of redundancy. You know what I mean? And so I still think there's a role still to be figured out. And maybe that, like was said before, maybe it's approaching it from a product management perspective, where here what my products are, and we're going to manage the life cycle of those products. I'm going to change this, and somebody said, I got an idea. Okay, that idea is already supported or delivered by this other thing. Anyway, I think we're sort of in the cloud of dust phase with this, where we've got to sort it out. But what I'd hate to see happen is we've traded the cost of build for the cost of complexity, because sometimes, like you said, it's going to be much higher, and we don't know the future in terms of the cost of the tokens, etc. Okay, so here are my thoughts. Historically, all these things were critical. I think to a certain extent, many of them remain critical today, but the implications are like concept of validation, like was pointed out. It's got to happen at a much faster pace. So one of the things we have to figure out is who is involved in providing stakeholder feedback. How available are their stakeholders? Do I need to replace a traditional stakeholder with a process owner, somebody who's closer to it? Anyway, just some thoughts I've had. The value case, as was already pointed out, I think it can be more experimental because the cost of getting it wrong is lower. Yeah, go ahead.
That value case, because it is becoming so easy to go out and create a full-blown application, even as a non-developer, we're going to see people saying, I'm not going to go out and pay for this expensive off-the-shelf package that I'm going to use 10% of. I'm going to build a custom app that does only what I need to do and only well enough that I needed to do it. And so the value proposition for the guy selling those big expensive packages suddenly changes.
I had a conversation earlier this week on this notion I've had for a couple of years that at first people laughed at me. Does this signal the end of commercial software? I was talking to the people at Silicon Slopes, and they said a lot of the SaaS companies that are members of Silicon Slope think they're staring death in the face.
Yeah.
Interesting time. Okay.
Especially if you sell 100 features and your average customer is using 2 or 3.
Exactly.
Which is often the case.
Yeah, exactly. I think about it. I've spent my life putting in large scale ERP and CRM systems. what percentage of SAP did I use? 2%, 3%? What percentage of SAP did I pay for? 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so just some thoughts on here in terms of, feedback loops have got to be near real time, might need to change the roles, who's doing it. And even prioritization. Is there now a lower threshold for the value case? Where before there was a pretty rigorous value case review. Is it worth our investment? Is the investment profile changed where I can take some flyers that before I might not have in the past? Anyway, great thoughts. I'm going to move on to the next topic because it's an important one to me. What do we do with the productivity gains? Here's a conversation I had about 4 months ago with the CIO. He's got a small software engineering team using by programming. He's been able to for the in-house developed applications. They're using a regular, commercial ERP, CRM, but the stuff they build internally. He said, using the vibe programming platforms, it takes about 1/6 of the time it did to build and deploy applications than it did in the past. So he reports this at the end of the year to the board of directors and the CEO, and the CEO's response was, good, then we can get rid of 5-6-year team. So that's the conversation we had. And I said, I'm not sure that's the right thing to do. So I'm going to talk about, I don't know if there's much to conversation. We can talk about whether I'm on track or off track. So I guess what I'm really saying is from an enterprise perspective, from an organizational perspective, we have to question the traditional cost benefit analysis. So no more cost benefit analysis, at least in their traditional form. So here's my thought. And this is the conversation I had with the CIO. I said, how big is your backlog for internally developed applications? He said it's about 3 years long. I said, and how many applications, projects that people requested never made it onto the backlog because they didn't meet the value threshold? He said, probably another year or two. I said, okay, so you got a 4 to 5 year backlog of projects. And in order to be a project, they had to generate some value. Otherwise, it wouldn't end up on the backlog, right? Yes. Okay. So the question isn't, should I get rid of 5-6 of my team? Because if I get rid of 5-6 of my team, that cuts the cost of that team by 5/6. But you haven't done anything to accelerate the delivery of value. It's a much better benefit to the organization if I can accelerate the delivery of value. So let's take your 3-year backlog. What impact would it have on revenue, on profits, on customer satisfaction, on employee satisfaction, if you could deliver that 3-year backlog in a year? If you could cut that time by 2/3, you've accelerated dramatically the creation of value. And isn't profitable growth always better than cutting costs? And so I think that's part of the way I've looked at it and talked to people about is we need to think differently about how to utilize the productivity gains. So for software engineers, I can deliver the current backlog. I can deliver value faster. For a marketing team, that's improved their productivity by 50%. Okay, what am I going to do with that 50% that would generate profitable growth? Maybe I can personalize my campaigns, my marketing campaigns to personas, and even down to individuals. For people in procurement, I can automate a lot of transaction processing. What could I do that would generate improved value for the organization? Do better vendor and supply chain risk management, for example. For security analysts, shift from reactions to proaction and so on. So anyway, I just want to make this pitch, this concept, this idea that I think we need to change the conversation about how to spend the productivity gains, because I think there's a much bigger benefit to taking the productivity, taking the newfound capacity and using it to build and innovate better and faster than just getting rid of the cost. Anyway.
The other thing,
okay.
Neil,
yeah,
a lot of times we spend a lot of time doing things that we have to do that don't add a lot of value to the business.
That's right.
If we can AI those, then those we have to do things go away and we can spend time on the more high value things that are more enjoyable.
Exactly. The things we didn't have time to do before, but now we do. Anyway, so last thing,
keep going.
Last thing I'm going to cover is some years ago, I've always struggled with cost benefit analyses in general, because the traditional cost benefit analysis with quantifiable costs and benefits, it doesn't handle costs or benefits that are difficult to quantify. So some years ago, I developed this simple model. I'm just going to go through it quickly. I do a traditional cost benefit analysis, but only with the quantifiable costs and benefits. But if I can't easily quantify those costs and benefits, I don't want to ignore them because they don't fit the model. Instead, I change the term. They become considerations. Those are the things that are difficult, are difficult to quantify. I don't ignore them. I call them considerations. I can't quantify them, but I can size them, large, medium, small, and I can prioritize them. So I can still factor them into my decisions. And I've been in a lot of decisions where I've used this model where the difficult to quantify things actually drive the decision. Risks are a good example, or risk mitigation or risk avoidance is a good example of a consideration. Hard to quantify a risk that hasn't been seen yet. I use a risk model where risks either come from complexity or uncertainty. And using this model, I say, these are my complexity risks. These are my uncertainty risks. Here's how big they are. And here's how important they are to my decision. And then in effect, I'm sort of weighing these considerations against each other and also against the quantifiable costs and benefits. And what I've found is it produces a much better and more holistic decision. So I just throw that out for your consideration and consumption. All right, I think my time's up. Any questions? If you want to talk to or get in touch with me, those are my 2 email addresses.
I thought you had 90 minutes, Neil.
No, I was told I had 30 and I better not go over time because Faisal's stuff is much better than mine. That's what I was told.
You've got a few more minutes, though. It's only 3:27.
So again, questions? Any questions or thoughts on any of this? I did have one question for the group. Thinking about either yourselves or other organizations you know. Anybody in the local area, not a software company, but a traditional practicing technology team that you think is really good at using vibe programming platforms? Anybody come to mind? If so, if you don't want to say, reach out to me.
Using what kind of platforms?
The vibe programming platform.
Oh, Vibe,
so they get
okay.
Vibe. Yeah. Have they done it well? Maybe not great, but they've done it well. If so, let me know because I'd like to talk to them because this is to me is a fascinating development. Because of the process implications, because it sort of blows up the way we've done things for a long, long time. All right. That's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Neil. And if you can share this material with the group, that will be much
I will
as well. Okay, so I know we can talk like for hours about vibe programming because there are so many different aspects to it, right? The gain of productivity and all those.
Let me just make one more point, Tiago. Sorry for cutting you off. Earlier this week, I had a conversation with a software engineer. He's had one successful exit. He's a startup guy. He's on his second, and I asked him. I said, Ben, how much of your programming today, of your product development, is handled with AI and how much is not? And how does that compare from 6 months ago? He said 6 months ago, AI was doing about 60% of the work. He was doing 40. He said the platforms have improved to the point the AI is now doing 95 to 98% of it. He said that's how much better they are than they were just 6 months ago. So to me, we're still in the early phases of this. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out. And I'm just glad, like Tiago said, I'm really, really old, so I don't have to deal with it personally. So,
yeah, Neil, one thing that talking about Vibe specifically, a good friend of mine, he's developing a software product. I'm going to present it to the group in the future. He's trying to get the patent finished before he does any advertising of it.
Sure.
But he assessed his typical model, which is offshoring, doing the development, getting a team of probably 5 individuals, and he estimated 10 to 12 months of development time. And I'm not joking when he tells me this. I was surprised when I heard it. 90 days, he has almost completed the project himself using Vibe as one of the major tools.
That's crazy.
It's staggering.
Well, and that's my thought about the end of commercial software. If I'm going to pick an ERP system, let's say I'm going to pick SAP. I'm going to pay a boatload of money for the software subscription. Then I'm going to pay a boatload of money for an implementation partner that's going to spend 12 to 18 months implementing it. In that period of time and for that cost, couldn't I build it? Or for less time and money, couldn't I build it with the right people, with the right subject matter experts, and with the right platform? It's like I said, it's a fascinating. I love being alive right now because this is just fascinates me. All right. There, I'm done, Tiago.
You've said that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I lie a lot. Just so you know, I lie a lot.
Only when your lips are moving.
Amazing. So yeah, actually this week I was talking to a CEO of a big company, and I was mentioning about this vibe programming thing and what's his take on his team. And he gave me 4 bullet points that I thought were very interesting. So I want to share with you guys. So what are like the productivity gains, right, with vibe programming? And he said, now my team can deeper problem framing. They can do better decision quality. They have more scenarios to explore, and they are stronger in executive storytelling, which is something that IT people usually never worried about, but now we do, so we can connect better with the business area of our companies as well. So I thought that very interesting because none of those 4 bullets are technical. We're talking about people being able to solve a problem using technology with the business together as one team, which is something that in the past we always suffered, right? We still do, but not as much as we did in the past. So yeah, I was very excited with this statement. Okay, so let's go to the second part of our meeting today. So Faisal, do you wanna share a little bit more about the demo, and we can go from there? Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Theo. Thank you, everyone. First of all, for giving me this time and joining this call. Like Neil said, I think my stuff is not as fun and interesting as what Neil just shared with us, but I'll try to make it not boring enough. So yeah, I'll start with my intro. I'm Faisal Irfan. I'm a software engineering leader, an engineering manager with about 15 years of experience. And I've worked for several large and small scale companies, including Upwork.com, Cisco Systems, PlumGrid INC, Aptura, and right now I'm working as a senior engineering manager at Vivint. And today I'm here to talk about Pivix. We were just talking about vibe coding. Vibe coding is amazing and it has changed the game a lot. And there are so many other tools engineering teams use these days to get their stuff done and to connect, to communicate, to track their projects. And the problem that Pivix is, I'm going to go to the next slide. The problem that Pivix is solving today is that engineering teams normally use 5 to 10 core systems or tools like Jira, Confluence, Slack, Gmail. At Vivint, we are using all of these tools. We are also using Teams and Outlook. These tools are amazing, but there is always this disconnect. These tools are providing you their own AI right now, which helps you do your jobs very efficiently. It helps each and every developer, QA, engineering managers. I use those tools a lot, but there is always this disconnect that they don't have shared context. They don't have shared memory, which always result in some sort of rework. And it's just not me who is struggling with this problem. I've seen other engineering managers. Just last week, I was talking to a senior engineering manager from a Fortune 100 company. She is facing these kind of problems where she has to spend time in building context when she is moving from one tool to another tool, Slack to Outlook. Copilot does not have full access to your Jira. Maybe it does not have access to Slack. It may not have access to other tools that your organization may use. So it normally results in 15 to 30% of rework. That's based on my experience. And I've seen other engineering leaders talking about the same thing. Dev time is always lost between context sharing and context switching and context building whenever they are going to each and every tool. Like when you use vibe coding tools, it might be really good when you have to do a small task in a small project. And even for MVP, it does an amazing job. Where it struggles when you have a huge platform, a huge ecosystem where you have 50 different projects going on. your vibe coding tool does not have full context, and you may make one change, it may impact other services as well, and it results in a lot of rework. I've seen that happening so many times in my previous companies and at Vivint as well, and it normally results in 10% of money loss in engineering budget loss in inefficiencies. And then, of course, because of not having full context, it happens very often that sometimes decisions are made based on having incomplete context, which results in rework and then a lot of other problems and lost time. Pivix is solving this problem. What Pivix is basically doing is that it creates an intelligence layer across all of major engineering tools like Jira, Confluence, Slack, GitHub, Gmail, Outlook. These tools, by the way, cover 90% of the things that's going on, activity going on in any engineering team today. I've used most of these tools throughout my career. I'm still using some of those tools at Vivint, all of those tools actually. And each and every of these tools has like piece of information, but not full picture. What Pivix is doing, we have created connectors which get all the information, all the data into one centralized place and provides the full picture to each and every tool of yours. I spend most of my time to Slack. Most of the engineering teams, engineering managers, they spend most of their time either in Slack or Teams. In one place in Slack, you have access to your full context. You are talking to, think of it this way. If I'm engineering manager, my boss reaches out to me. He wants to have an update and I'm in a meeting. He might have to wait. He needs this update immediately, and he may have to wait for another hour or so until I'm out of my meeting. He's gonna talk to just Pivix, and Pivix will give him full update of the project. Of course, it does not give him the information which is not which is my private chat or my private email communication or one-on-one communication. Only the public information is going to be shared with my manager. And then it has full access to my, like I mentioned, Jira, Confluence, and my calendar. So it helps me plan for my each and every meeting. It helps me plan my one-on-ones, track my projects in one place. Whenever I open up my Slack, it will give me everything in one place, like my full world based out of these tools. It gives me my high priority tickets, blockers, access to all the communication, which I may miss. It happens all the time. Most of you guys, if you are using Slack or Teams, you might sometimes lose some message or some critical information in a Slack thread or a team chat, which has probably 500 developers or 500 team members. So you don't get to see all the chat all the time. I'm getting more than 2,000 messages every single day on Slack. Half of my days spent on Slack. So sometimes it happens that I miss some information, but Pivix gives me all that information in one place, in one screen. It gives me access to my GitHub. It gives me access to any blockers that my team has before even my developers reach out to me and telling me that, okay, something is blocking us. And if something makes some change by some other team is going to impact your project, it's going to notify that before it happens. An example would be, I'm working on a project at Vivint. I'm not going to go into the too much details of that project, but it has financial impact during certain times of a day. It can be really high. It can be in billions. Some of our DevOps teams made the change in December, which decreased the success rate of that project about 52%. So from 96%, it went lower than 50%. And that results in like millions. That impacted in millions of dollars when we talk about money. When they made this change, they announced it in a Slack communication Slack channel, which was public, but not all the team members are part of that channel. So that was missed by us. They did not communicate it through email, but we got to know that when we ran that event on production server and the success rate dropped out. And then we identified what was the issue. And then a month after, they did another change which impacted the project again. We did the retros, we figured out the problem, we solved it. But Pivix, I started using this. I did the Pivix integration for me, and the third time they tried to do that, it identified the issue before actually we faced that problem in production. And where it actually runs everything, all of your data, you don't have to send all of your IP and all the data to another system. It lives inside your premises and inside your infrastructure. And then it has role-based intelligence for devs. It gives them the information which they are actually supposed to see. No personal communication is being shared with any of the systems or any of the users which are not supposed to know that information. Then I've seen this question so many times that why not just use Microsoft, Google, or Atlassian for this? They are the ones who have built these tools, and they have all the AIs available, and most of your data already lives there. We live in the world where we are using all these together at the same time. I'm using when we are using Microsoft, Atlassian, Google, and then AWS and so many other tools. We use Figma, we use Slack, but like I mentioned, there is no one single tool which is doing all of this in one place, and they don't have full access to all the information. And the context building is the major challenge. You use one tool, you have limited context. You go to another tool, you need to rebuild the whole context every time if you are going to use their UIs. And then, of course, the risk of keeping everything in one place is to log down with one vendor. And your roadmap starts to depend on the roadmap of the vendor. Your data becomes completely logged in. It's difficult to move. And sometimes migrating from one vendor to another vendor is going to be really expensive. That you just keep using that tool. And then flexibility of using better tools as they are emerging, it disappears over time. You don't get to do that since you are logged into with one vendor. So far, what Pivix has been integrated with Jira, Confluence, GitHub, GitLab, Gmail, Outlook, Google, and OneDrive. I think most of these are the most common tools being used by most of the engineering teams, and they cover 90% of all activity inside any engineering organization. But it's not limited to that. As your tech stack evolves, you can just add a new connector by yourself, and we are building more connectors for all the most commonly used tools, but we have this list of connectors which are already built and being used. Like I mentioned, they cover 90% of your stack already. But what we do is that we are using standard APIs, no ETL pipelines, no scraping, and no proprietary agents that break every time vendor is going to push a new update. And it sits on your existing stack. You are not going to install new tools or anything to make it work. The setup time is very small, roughly 2 weeks to get things started and data ingested. It works on a very simple RAG-based architecture, which means no model training. There is some part of fine-tuning which happens every night. For specific models, if you want to use custom models, you are not locked down with any model. Whichever model you want to use, you can use it. At Vivint, we are not allowed to use so many AI tools like we are not supposed to use Claude. We are not supposed to use ChatGPT and of course DeepSeek. But the implementation that Pivix has, you get to own your own infrastructure for the LLM. So all the models are deployed inside either your own infrastructure. Everything stays inside your inside your infrastructure and inside your walls. if you want to use a hybrid model or a private cloud over GCP, AWS, that's also supported. And if there is a hybrid approach as well, where all the context and data lives inside your infrastructure, and through encrypted data communication, it communicates with your AI models on cloud. That's also supported. And if you want to switch any model, you can switch it in a matter of minutes, because of RAG, there is, like I mentioned, there's no custom model training at all. There's some fine tuning if you want to host those models by yourself. So there is this execution intelligence layer, which is supposed to behave differently for each and every user. For example, for developers and engineering managers and QAs, it's gonna surface the hidden dependencies across the team. Like I mentioned, that we have faced some challenges where different teams made different changes, which impacted our projects as well, because we work in a team in a department where at least 30 different projects are being worked on at the same time. One change can impact other projects as well. Even if we are using vibe coding, it does not have full context. Pivix is supposed to provide that kind of context. And then it flags high-risk pull request, daily to-dos, past rework patterns, and it sends change impact alerts before anything merges and goes in. It helps with building automation test suite with full context. For people like me, the engineering managers, it helps me plan all of my meetings. Same for developers, of course, same for QAs. And then sometimes some communication is lost between Slack threads or team messages or some huge thread of emails. Some of those messages actually need some sort of action items. What it does is that it identifies those and gives me access into one single screen where I can take action on that, even if it's missed today or in last 90 days or something. And then one layer above, people like directors, VPs, CIOs, Pivix is going to give them more visibility. Like they don't have to rely on all the time on me, engineering managers, to give them updates. They will be able to spot so many things just by talking to Pivix and looking into the Pivix dashboard, like which squad is blocker in real time and what is blocking that squad, which squad, and it also spots which team is being burnt out and they may end up losing people because of that burnout. It helps them find the real-time delivery confidence signals per project or per program, not just a static dashboard that does not give them enough information like that you normally get from from Jira or Confluence. And it helps them identify technical debt, not buried into the tickets, but traceable and actionable items. Do you guys have any questions?
So the business value, it's very, very clear. Are you planning to show the tool to us as well, or?
Yes.
Yeah, let's get to that part.
Yeah, I'd love to see that part.
Okay, so just one last thing. That's why I'm trying to speed it up so I can spend some time on showing you the dashboards that have been done so far. But then the few things which I think really matters, the security and the data sovereignty. That's something that I've heard a lot. Like I mentioned, data stays. We have data which is going to stay inside your environment, both in hybrid and local mode. Then there is cloud mode. Even in this cloud mode, you can have all the data inside your premises, inside your own infrastructure. No one is ever gonna be able to. Even Pivix can't see this data because it's highly encrypted. The keys lives inside encryption keys lives inside your own infrastructure, and you are not logged in with any vendor. And as soon as there is a new tool or your stack evolves, there's a connector available, and you should be able to work with it. And none of your data is going to be used for any kind of custom training. So the IP remains safe. I'm going to get to the demo part of it. Okay, I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, so so far we have this web-based. You guys can see my screen now, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So far we have this web-based dashboard. The Slack part of team, the Slack and team parts of the apps is in progress. The goal is to have everything in one place in Teams or Slack. Most of the engineering teams are spending their time, half of their times, well, half of my times is mostly the meetings, and then rest of the time is almost always on Slack or Confluence. So that's how this dashboard looks. It's an initial. We did not have to load so much data into it. We just loaded a small amount of data. This is the dashboard that I'm using, and the data that you're seeing here, the project names and the IP information has been completely changed. So it's Pivix internal information which you get to see over here. So as an engineering manager, my daily action items are always in front of me in Slack, and I'm able to take action on those as soon as I get to my dashboard. Every morning when I get to office, before I start going into my meetings, I need to plan for my meetings. This helps me plan my meetings. I need to identify my action items, the critical blockers. If my developers reach out to me, they tell me if something is blocking them in deployment, if anything, if there is some issue for the sprint. But with this, all the public information which is available in any communication channel or Confluence or Jira or any other tool, that's going to be visible to me in this one place. I'm able to see my sprint overview, the blockers that my team have, and then the critical blockers. I can, like, for example, this is an actual data. One of my team member has been blocked on this project for on this MR, which is created by someone else for some time. Now it gives me visibility to this. It's a little bit old data, but it gives me visibility, and I'm able to assign the reviewers to it immediately just by clicking over here. And then if issues like if someone has created, someone is about to deploy something or some code is about to merge, which is going to create problem to my project, it will list them down based on the priority over here. So I can take action item on runtime. And then this is again an actual data. I had to change the company name for the demo. Basically the sync meeting between the parent company and us to discuss this project, some dependency that we have on their projects and their data. So it helps me prepare for that based on the communication, even if I've missed some of the communication, even if I missed it on Slack or Teams. But I was part of that public channel. As long as that's a public information, it's going to be available. Again, it's not going to share any information, which any communication that I do one-on-one with my team members, but it will make that visible to me, but not to other team members, like not my managers or people who are not participant in that chat. And then any decision queues, if someone is waiting on my decision, or based on my to-do notes or my meetings that I have done so far, is going to create of decisions that I need to make. Or if someone is waiting on my decision, like over here in a Slack communication, someone wants my approval to decide what to use, Kafka or ETL. This is for one of the project where our parent company needs to have our data, so they can process this data and return the process data back to us. And they wanted to get my approval on that. So this is something right in front of me. I need to find this chat out of like 50 different chats. That's for Slack, but does similar thing for Teams. Then for another project, we let some of our contractors go recently, and then it is going to impact our timelines. So and there is this discussion that was going on Slack, which was supposed to give information, which was between product manager, program manager, and me, to see if we can reduce the scope and then create a fast follow plan. And these needed my approval. I could not get to this chat. So before I opened this Slack, before I opened this Pivix window, it showed me that information. Same thing, it gives me information about my each and every developer, what they are doing. It helps me prep for my one-on-ones, my Scrum meetings, my sprint plannings, my sprint refinements. And then if I have any meetings coming up, it helps me prepare for that. And then this Slack window, I can ask it for anything. Like I can ask it for weekly reports. I mean, I can type it in, but there are some short items. It communicates with AI, and based on the real context, it gives me all the information firsthand over here. I know it's slow a little bit right now, but yes, that's all the information. Like it gave me an input on to plan for my my stand-up meeting. Oh, actually, this is for my one-on-one with one of my engineers, based on his work and his and this preparation is going to be, if it's a meeting, a recurring meeting, it's going to create this based on the historical data of each and every meeting. There is this widget, which is a Teams app, which actually take notes in your application, live transcribe, and then takes notes. And based on that, it plans for all of my one-on-ones. So each and every one-on-one is connected. And then I get to see all of my blockers over here. And then it shows me which tools are connected. And if there is any disconnections, it helps me figure that out. And if there are any updates team-wide, it gives me access to that over here. And yeah, the AI model is probably right now very slow. But yes, it gives me the detailed engineering report over here. If something needs a Jira ticket to be created, I can create it over here. And then I can export PDFs and generate PDF reports over here. This is just the gist of it. Think of it this way: vibe coding tools that you guys are using, it has that vibe coding tool will have full access, full context of your project and your ecosystem. So it does not miss anything. And if it's writing some code, again, before a dev is going to create an MR, push some code, it's going to review the code with the full context, not just the context of a ticket or a small sprint or a project. I think I've taken a lot more time than expected. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking for your feedback and suggestions and input and what you guys think about.
That was sort of the. Thanks, Faisal. I've worked with Faisal. I kind of let him present all this, but we're really interested to hear ideas, feedback. You guys are all thought leaders in this space, so I don't know, what's your overall impressions? If you think we're wasting our time, tell us that too. If you see potential, if you see, we want all your thinking so we can put it in our product and then forget to mention you when we take all that credit for your great ideas.
Or pay any commissions.
Or pay any commissions, exactly. Oh, wait a minute. We've got this meeting recorded. Crap.
We can have free access to the tool once you release it.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of hoping there might be some thought leader early adopters that would let us play in their sandbox and had some, thought this might be a great tool to help you in your organization and would give us an opportunity to build something out in the real world. I mean, Faisal's building it in his environment, but it's always more healthy to have a cross section than just a one company tailored solution. So if anyone's interested, we'd love to implement something like this. all the data would stay inside your domain. So that's the design of the system, is to keep it all sequestered inside of whatever company's domain that it's running at. So anyway, thoughts, ideas, suggestions?
I think we are on time right now, but if you guys can share the information, we can definitely send you to you as well. So Bettina and I can gather all the feedbacks and send to you guys as well. One thing that we also wanted to checkpoint is that on the 17th, you're going to have a speaker. So Fred, if you can pretty quick share a few seconds about who's going to talk for now our next session.
Yeah, you bet. So we have Maria Korlov. She's an award-winning technology journalist. She's got a plethora of a background. You can see it in the flyer that's going to be distributed out. But as a veteran tech, she's going to be talking about journalist with regards to how it looks at AI. So I think it'll be very interesting to see her perspective on that.
Excellent.